And I think the recording is going. All right. Well, we're going to get started. My name is Eric Kelleher. I'm a career readiness consultant with Kent ISD. Excuse me. Just wanted to welcome everybody to today's session. And on the Career Readiness Network, this is our second session for the year, and it's labeled Careers in Technology. We have a panel discussion. We've got with us 5 guest speakers to kind of share about their career pathway and give us some insights and advice about everything from technology to their story to what we should be looking for, skills and things on the horizon. So I'm going to introduce real quick. Do I have Joe Chrysler here? And if you're a panelist, obviously, if you could keep your camera on for those who are panelists. And if you are not, and you want to keep your camera on for our guests to see, that would be terrific if you're able to as well. Joe, are you with us here? Not quite sure if I see him yet.
I think he's muted.
Okay, he's muted. Yeah, Joe.
This is the first time I've ever done a Zoom call, obviously. So, hi, I'm Joe from Atomic Objects.
All right, wonderful, Joe. Thanks. Denise Browning.
Hello, Denise Browning from Little Caesars Enterprises and all of Village Companies.
Awesome, fantastic. John Johnston.
Yeah, John Johnston here from People IT.
Oh, fantastic. Chad Stripling, do we have you here?
Chad Stripling here from 8451, which is the analytics branch for Kroger.
Okay, cool. And finally, Edwin Dizdarevic. I don't know if I got that.
You got super close. Dizdarevic, Edwin Dizdarevic from Intuit MailChimp. So,
okay, fantastic. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And thank you, guests who are coming from a large percentage. You come from Kent County. We got about half of you or more coming from Kent County, but we have people from over in the Bay Area, from Ingham County, Saginaw, Oakland, Muskegon. Looks like I see Macomb County, Wayne. So we have some people from all over to listen to our guests here today talk about technology. So I'm going to have us start off quickly. And so these questions that I'm going to ask, obviously for some of them, definitely want everybody to share, especially when it's like, tell us about yourself and your company. For the other questions, you don't have to answer every single question. If you feel like, hey, 3 or 4 people have already answered, I feel like that's enough. Don't feel like you have to answer and then maybe jump in on the next one. We've got about 40-ish minutes to go through this, and we still want to give a little bit of time for some Q&A and or any type of breakout if we have that. So for our first question, everybody's introduced themselves, but why don't you tell us a little bit about, very quickly, 50,000-foot view about your company or organization. Is it explicitly a technology company, or do you have a role in technology within a larger company? Like Little Caesars clearly is not a technology company, but Denise, you have a role doing something in technology. So why don't you go ahead and start?
I do. So I am in cybersecurity with Little Caesars Enterprises, which is not just a pizza company. The Illich companies also own the Red Wings, a number of concert venues, most of the parking around the arenas, the Fox Theater, as well as our Detroit Tigers. Go Tigers, have to give them a special plug because we are really excited at Illich to have them doing well. So cybersecurity obviously is very important with all of those entities. We accept a lot of credit card payments throughout all of our venues and restaurants. We have, it's funny because in cybersecurity at other jobs, we always kind of talked about the secret sauce. And at Little Caesars, we actually are protecting the recipe for the secret sauce. So my primary responsibilities are cybersecurity awareness and training. This is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, so this is super timely for that. And I also focus on policy and third-party risk management. So that is generally what I'm doing. So obviously we aren't a tech company, but all of those entities use a lot of tech, from baseball analytics to AI systems that help us predict how much pizza each restaurant has to have ready at each time of day, to how much dough they should be making the day before. Sure. So tech, it's a very high tech company.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you so much. Chad, why don't you go ahead and jump in and introduce yourself?
Thank you. So Chad Stripling, so I'm a director of data science at 8451, and we are the branch we're owned by Kroger. And so Kroger is a grocery chain, a national grocery chain with 3,000 stores. And so they have a lot of data too, just like Little Caesars, where we call it kind of the sandbox of data. And we use that for several different things. Our company, 8451, is all technical. So they've kind of put that as their own branch. So everybody within that space focuses on technology, whether that's marketing and using our data to help understand what's the right way to communicate with customers, whether it's store operations. So things like, hey, if someone does a pickup order, what's the optimal route that that picker should go between the store and all the items to really make sure it's efficient? So it's very unique things like that. And then a lot of things in my spaces include things like, we want to send you a coupon, but we want to send it for the thing you want. And so how do we build predictive models to predict what is the thing that you would want versus trying to give you a coupon that you wouldn't ever want to use? And so really just trying to figure out ways to leverage our data to make an easier experience for the customers.
Awesome. Great. Very good explanation. Awesome. Thanks. How about Joe? Joe, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and where you're with?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Joe Chrysler. I work with Atomic Object. We're a custom software agency here in the west side of Michigan in Grand Rapids, in Kent County. So a lot like marketing departments, you might have some in-house marketing talent. You might hire an external agency to come in and help with some stuff, or law. You might have in-house lawyers. You might also hire an external agency to come help with bigger stuff, or just to provide outside perspective. We're a custom software agency, so when businesses around town or nationally need extra help on the software front or need to bring in some expertise that they don't have in-house, they call us. We have a team of about a much smaller company than the other two listed so far. We're about 110 people spread across Grand Rapids, Ann Arbor, Chicago, and Raleigh. But Grand Rapids and Kent County is definitely where we started and kind of home base.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you. John Johnson. Or JJ.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, John Johnson here from People IT. Again, we're a small IT consultancy based here in West Michigan. We really focus on helping other companies. We really build and support world-class IT teams. So we come into companies where they've either got an extended backlog that they need accelerated through, and we're bringing kind of augmented staff into that, or they've got specialized projects that their team might not have the expertise to deliver on. So we really split our work into three groupings. We work on base infrastructure for companies. We've got a team doing that, and then software integrations, and then business intelligence, which is kind of where we see a lot of the growth. We also have a consulting arm where we do a lot of business continuity, disaster recovery planning for companies, and tabletop exercises in preparation and readiness for that. So yeah, so that's kind of us in a nutshell.
Great, thanks. Finally, Edvin, go ahead and introduce yourself and who you're with.
Hey, good morning. Once again, Edvin Desirevich. I'm a senior site reliability engineer at Intuit MailChimp. If you've heard of TurboTax or QuickBooks or anything like that, that's Intuit. They have recently, over the last couple of years, acquired MailChimp. We do predominantly, our main thing is email marketing. We're in the SMS space. There's a lot of new AI stuff like everybody else for helping you build your templates out, send your campaigns, stuff like that. Very, very high level of what my job is making sure that our site stays as reliable as possible, that our customers are able to use it. Any code releases that any application releases that end up going out are as secure and as quality as possible. But yeah, what I do is I've been doing our cloud migration, getting us off of co-located on premises systems into AWS, and yeah, that's been mostly what I've been up to.
Okay, great. Thanks everybody for sharing. I think I got everybody. I hope I did. So again, feel free to answer the questions as they come up, and if you feel like you're going to pass us, you can just go ahead and pass. I won't call on each one of you. We'll just let it kind of come as it comes. But so a little bit, everybody shared a little bit about what you do. This is, I guess, a two-part question. For those who want to talk about like very, very high level, knowing we've got 5 panelists, like maybe what the question would be a two-part. What got you into technology in the first place? Maybe was that your original career path, or did your journey lead you into technology? And then secondly, how did you get started? Like what got you to where you're at today?
I have kind of an interesting career path, so I'll start. I was originally, my bachelor's degree is in occupational therapy, and I started out as an occupational therapist in adolescent mental health. So how am I in cybersecurity? No one wants to pay for adolescent mental health services right now, so programs were closing like crazy. Well, this was even 20 years ago. And I decided I needed to find something else that I like to do. I had gotten kind of into this thing called the internet, and and was really enjoying exploring computers and what they had to bring. So I ended up getting some Microsoft certifications. I became a Microsoft certified systems engineer and ended up transferring into an entry-level IT role from my OT role in the same healthcare system. And then they implemented these HIPAA privacy and security laws, which I think everyone's heard of by now. But at that time, security regulation was very new, and we suddenly had to learn how to implement all of these cybersecurity controls. And I really loved that part of it. So I ended up going back and getting a master's in cybersecurity so that I could specialize in cyber.
Wow, awesome. I'd love to hear the changing career path, because that's just realistic, right? I'm not saying that some people don't still keep the same career that they started in when they were younger, but we're seeing more and more and more. I mean, they say average is what, 16 times you might change a job in a career, and sometimes what is it, 8 or more, that it's different career pathways. So fantastic.
And I'm giving away my age, but cybersecurity didn't exist when I was in college because the internet didn't exist, and it was very difficult to hack into systems back then.
That's very cool though. Yeah, it didn't, when we talk about like, hey, what kind of career paths should we be preparing kids for that don't yet exist? Like, you are literally an example of that, Denise. All right, who else would like to share?
I can bring up the kind of the other side of that. Is I was a like nerdy kid in high school, spent a lot of the time in the library. One of the sections I gravitated to was the computer books. So learned a lot about how to program little games and websites when I was a kid. Got went to school at Saginaw Valley for computer science. Got a programming job right out of there, and then moved to Grand Rapids and joined a software consultancy after that. So like kind of the counterpoint of like super the same thing all the time, kind of right from the get-go for me.
No, that's awesome. Actually, in a great world, we actually are preparing people for the jobs they really want to do, and they love it and they stick with it. So that's our ideal, right? And what we always talk about is how can we prepare kids for the things and get them into a path that they enjoy early on. Thanks. One more. Anybody else want to share?
I can add on to that just because I think it's interesting what Joe said. I also was one that, I'll just be transparent, I'm a terrible speller. So as a little kid, I thought I should be in math, and I loved math. So that's what I did growing up. But what do you do with math? I think a lot of people say. And so understanding that, but I think now that, going through your career, you realize everybody uses math or technology and computer science for something, and it might be a space that you wouldn't even think about. And so I just like to think that, like, as I was looking for a career, I thought I was going to go into actuary, but then to find out all these different companies, whether it was Little Caesars or whether it was Kroger, they all have math and departments for technology to help them with whether it's figure out whatever they do. So there's opportunity everywhere in that space, and you just kind of got to think which areas you're most passionate about.
Awesome. Fantastic. All right. We had too much. If you had something you wanted to jump in, please feel free to do that. Otherwise, I'll go into the next question. But if somebody wanted to share, okay. So next question is, and this is actually kind of a big one for us, because we have a lot of people around here who are counselors. The overwhelming majority of our people are counselors, and we often talk about how are we going to get kids ready for what's next, or for the real world, I put in quotes, right? But sometimes we don't know what that is. We feel like, oh, we teach math or we teach science, but really we're getting kids ready because Chad and Joe knew what they wanted to do. Denise did, but she's gone a totally different route. So we've got counselors here. How do we help as counselors, and how do we help the counselors help the teachers to recognize that there's probably more than just your subject matter to be getting kids ready for what's next? So the question I have is, what skills do you believe are essential for somebody who wants to start a career in technology today? And what skills or knowledge gaps do you frequently see in new graduates?
I'll maybe kick that one off just for a second. One, I'm probably the least technical person on the call, so I got to confess to that to begin with. But I'm one of the kind of founders of our company, and didn't find myself on a track to be a specialist or really a geek in any realm, but realized that we kind of tried to surround myself with really smart people. And I was involved in the business consulting realm of things. And what you realize in the business consulting realm of things, a lot of things can be solved through technology. And we call our company People IT because it's people first, technology second kind of approach. But I think what we see with young people coming through, and with a lot of young people kind of in our office for different things, whether they're doing internships or they're coming for visit days. And the biggest thing for me is that they get exposed to lots of technologies. They really get a chance to kind of play in a sandbox that's very safe for them. I think that's just one of the things we see, is that they get down a pretty narrow track too early on. And it's kind of like, hey, there's such an array of things they can focus on. And I think that's just really important kind of in that development. I think the other side that I see specifically is the people skills side of things. I've seen a lot of great technologists develop a lot of great products that nobody wants to use. And I think it's that ability to kind of actually ask really good questions, come with a curious mindset, and lead with that idea of like, hey, what's the problem I'm truly trying to solve? Or what's the opportunity this organization is truly trying to take advantage of? And how do I feed into that? I think that's one of the things we see, again, as young people kind of come through our office. It's like, hey, how do you not just try to prove yourself with your technical skills? How do you kind of take a step back and ask those really curious questions about why somebody asked me to do this? What's the outcome of this? Who's this going to serve in the end? Where does this go in the long run? And I think I realize that the young people that we can kind of train are the people that I see come through our office that are the best at what they do. They don't just have this high technical ability, they have the ability to really ask good questions and feel a confidence, or have been given a confidence to ask those good questions. So yeah.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah, I think to build on that a little bit, another skill that I see that the best software developers have that not everyone does is really being really good at research and having a natural curiosity for understanding very deeply, both kind of what you were saying, like what's useful, like what do we actually want the software to do? Like this should be something that's useful to people, but also like how things work. I think encouraging that. One of my favorite books as a kid was the Way Things Work, which is this beautiful old illustrated book that a lot of people have seen. But I think instilling that natural curiosity and kind of dissatisfaction with magic is really critical in a lot of the really good software developers that I know, at least.
Edwin.
Yeah, I was going to extend on a lot of what they said. One of my biggest things to always remember is always a teacher, always a student, always be willing to learn and always be willing to teach, because both ways, you're learning more, they're learning more. It's a consistent cycle, especially in technology. Things are always evolving. You can't learn just one thing and then expect to do that for the rest of your life. As you've heard recently, I mean, AI is currently everywhere. I don't want to say it's a fad. I do think there's a lot there, but it's just another new thing. I think the best thing that people can have is the ability to learn, the ability to research, as somebody else mentioned, but the ability and willingness to continue learning something new. Don't get staunch or stuck or comfortable, because the industry will pass you by.
Great. And I'm going to give Denise and Chad if you had something. I'm going to ask, kind of piggyback off that question, because, and I'm going to make this stereotype. All right. The stereotype is that when a kid goes into when I say kid, a young graduate, high school or college graduate, decides they want to go into technology, they're like, I don't want to deal with people. I want to deal with technology, or I want to deal with this. So, and I think JJ kind of alluded to it a little bit, like, hey, I want to go, and we have the stereotype that they're the introvert, they don't deal with people, they're not good with people even, don't have the people social skills, but they want to go in because they just want to work in this kind of bubble. JJ, you kind of alluded to that a little bit, but in each of your roles, whether it's cybersecurity or it's people facing, is that how do we help our counselors, help our teachers, help our students to kind of debunk that myth that you can kind of find your own little bubble? And maybe there are some roles like that in technology, just like there are for pretty much any job, right? But I would probably say that's not the norm. It's probably not the standard, or maybe it is. So maybe that stereotype of that nerdy introvert, I don't want to deal with people, I just like to work with the computers. How would we maybe talk to that?
There are really very few situations where you're not working with a team and having to interact and having to problem solve with others and resolve conflicts between people who have different ideas about how a project or system should go. I mean, when I first started in my entry-level IT job at the hospitals, some of my work was doing help desk user support kinds of things. And my manager actually said, I'm only going to hire people with a mental health background from now on for this, because you know how to interact and deal with every kind of person who's calling you for help. It really is essential to have the social skills, even if you're not completely comfortable. If you're more of an introvert, you still have to have the basics.
Sure. Sure. And I bet you're, like you just said, your mental health background in terms of understanding dealing with people probably has come in huge. And
Oh, it helps even in my awareness and training roles now, trying to figure out how to explain technical concepts to people, to non-technical people in an understandable way. So
anybody else want to add to that?
I think one of that, I'll add to that. There's two things there. You're always gonna be part of a team. And so that team is typically gonna be, there's always a group of, a data scientist, there's an engineer, there's a product person, and there's also a business person, right? Your stakeholder who you're talking to. So you're always gonna have somebody that you're building this for, so you're gonna communicate with them. And so understanding that is really helpful through that process. The other thing is, as they're learning how to do that communication, it's not something you're expected to have to know right away. It's something that comes with the job. And I think that's something that we also like to teach is there's levels when you get into different companies to help figure out exactly how you would continue to progress in that. So whether that is learning how to take your next step of having somebody that you're partnering with, the next step being maybe somebody that you're shadowing, somebody you're interning, and then you start to kind of build that confidence and knowing how to do it. So I think that's the other thing you can tell them is if it's not something you're comfortable with, just like anything, practice and iteration will help get you there. And that's something that happens a lot in the environment.
Right. That's fantastic. And when I first years ago, I was a teacher, and then I got hired as a teacher, consultant / technology person. So I worked in IT department for a school system. And there was a younger gentleman who came in, and you could tell he was like just fresh, right behind the ears. He knew how to deal with his technology people, but now with people who do not know technology. And maybe that's probably another thing, especially if you're customer facing. Is one thing to be able to talk to your people in any type of role, but being able to help explain the non-technology side of technology is probably a key skill. So I wrote down some great things I heard. Research, people interactions, always being the student, always a teacher. So some great responses. Thank you. And just want to reiterate, Samantha had put in the chat, if you do have questions for our panelists, please feel free to throw those in the chat box. I definitely have some more questions, but we want to get to yours as well. The next question. So what would you say the role of formal education and certifications plays in your field? What do they play in your field? For example, are certifications necessary? Is a college degree necessary for the roles in your field? Or is it more just a cert? Other alternative pathways to get to where you're at in your types of roles or other roles in your company?
I can kick that one off. I went to college standard way, got computer science degree, all that. I nearly flunked out, I'll be honest with you. But I'm doing fairly well for myself in the industry. So that's kind of to show that I don't think that college is critical. And also a lot of the skills that I learned in college are very scholastic, and I don't think they apply well to the industry. Many of the things that I've learned and how I work, I'm being fairly open and blunt, but like school was school. It taught me how to be resilient. It taught me how to work hard. It taught me how to continue working against adversity. That is a critical skill in any industry. However, any of the like programming skills, a lot of the languages were outdated. The things that they were teaching us were outdated. The newer technologies were way like a decade ahead, if not more so, in the actual industry. So, and I've met, oh my God, most of the best engineers I've worked with, or most of the best people in our space that I've worked with, ended up going to a boot camp, learning what they needed to learn for the industry, and then have become some of the best people in their space that I've worked with. So that is to say, I think that there are many paths to becoming a software engineer or a person in technology that doesn't have to conform to going to college. But if college is attractive and that makes sense for you, it is still a pathway. I'm not to say it's not a pathway. Also, it depends on your goal. If your goal is to become a professor, school and college makes sense. The industry is just a very different animal. It's a completely different world that you work in, and it's very different. So again, getting comfortable with adversity, getting comfortable with research, and knowing that you're never done learning.
Let me follow up that with another question, and somebody else can jump in here. Does it mean that your company hire people who don't necessarily have a 4-year degree but have the certifications, or are you looking more for the skill set? Like, are you saying, hey, this is when you're doing an interview, you're looking for a skill set, and the degree is less the concern as more as the skill set or the certifications?
All of it, all of those things. If you have a college degree, great. If you don't, there are other certifications that can help out. It's more about your ability, your history. If you have no history, if you're coming into the industry for the first time, certifications will absolutely help. especially in the space that you obviously want to be working within. I mean, there's a bunch of cloud ones, there's a bunch of AI certs these days. There's a bunch of certifications. Find one that you want to specialize in, and I can argue you will be able to find a job.
Anybody would like to add to that?
Yeah, I think what we see as well is just it is such a broad spectrum. You know, we have somebody on our team who just refuses to go on the certification path, but is constantly learning. Like they are constantly geeking out about stuff, and probably one of the smartest people on our team. And you know, we had a choice to make. Gosh, do we really set a standard here? And that person, if they're really not going to go on certification path, is there space for them on our team? And we realized no, there really is. But we're really looking for that hunger and curiosity, constantly learn. Everybody on our team is on a certification journey. They're on a continual growth plan and continuing education journey. They get to help direct that journey for the most part, but really say it is important for us, and more the credentials to kind of show clients and to win potential business, if I'm honest. But it also builds a sense of pride in the team when they go on that journey. But the biggest thing for us is that if people aren't passionate about what they're doing, if they're not geeks about what they're doing certifications is very hard for them. And there's some people who just are not good learners in that classroom structured environment. They're like going to go home and watch a ton of YouTube videos. They're going to play on their own servers at home. They're going to, learn new stuff, and they're going to come back and apply that to the world that we live in. And I really think it is kind of keeping that broad spectrum. But whatever your education level, you've got to be able to do it right in the middle of the day when it really matters. And if you can do that, that's kind of the biggest standard that we look for and look at, and realize we got to stay flexible for that.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would like to add something on that. My last job was with General Motors. Companies like GM, you're not going to get it there. Your resume won't even get reviewed unless there's a degree. So it really kind of varies. A degree or military cyber experience, because military cyber experience tops all other cyber experience out there. So they will take people without degrees if they have cyber experience in the military.
Okay.
So that's another like very possible route for students if they're interested in that as a career pathway. I think also in some of the larger corporations, and I do think this varies between different kinds of IT shops, but in a lot of the larger corporations, if you just want to code, that's cool and fine. But if you want to get to manager, director, those kinds of levels, if those are your career goals, then a degree is likely going to be necessary.
So I'm hearing both sides, and I think what I heard, and I want to make sure I'm doing a good job of synthesizing. It depends. And Evan, I see your hand, so you'll jump right here and there. It depends on the role, depending on the organization, depending on the type of work that you want to do. And that's what I do want our schools to better understand, that there's multiple pathways. It depends on what you want to do. Because I've heard some said, hey, really, regardless of the degree or not, we want certs. We want the continuing education. I think that's what's probably above all is everybody says we want continuing education, whether you're getting a cert, whether you're doing your own self-study, but you're showing demonstration of knowledge of that. Some will require the degrees, some will not. And I've heard that. Edwin, go ahead. And then I do have a follow-up question to that, but Edwin.
Yeah. One, I want to add on. So concrete examples that I have of people that came from like a completely different background. So Mailchimp has prided itself on people started in the support space, answering phone calls from our customers, and they've worked their way into these apprenticeship roles that we have internally that have allowed them to grow into managers, directors, software engineers, depending on what their interest ended up being. But they started in support coming from, the amount of what's called like baristas that I've met that had 10 plus years in barista or being a barista or working in the bar as a bartender, coming in as support and then becoming a director in the company. So like everybody else has said, it varies drastically from company to company and what they're willing to do and what their culture is. There is those spaces.
Okay.
And I want to add on, I got a question for what is a boot camp very quickly. It is a short-term education specifically targeted at what you want to do in your job. It can vary from a couple of weeks to a couple of months. It is you have to pay for it, but it's not as expensive as a 4-year degree. And it's very specialized into what you want to do right after.
When you're finished with that boot camp, do you usually walk away with a certification of some sort? Or not
It's a sort of it's you finish the boot camp. There's a certification. I don't know if it's considered a cert. It's a completion. It's like a small, not a degree, but comparable.
Sure. So one of the things that I'm hearing though is we have, again, counselors who are dealing with, we have kids coming in like, I don't know what I want to do, or I just don't know if I want to go to college. We want the kids to know, and our counselors to know, that there are pathways for these kids who are very technically savvy or have an inclination towards that there's still pathways for them for that, to go to these boot camps to get some of these certifications, even if they're, you said, you just said yourself, Edmund, like you almost flunked out of college. It's not the end all be all. That said, recognizing, I think getting them into that job, and then recognizing if you want to advance yourself, then you have to be a lifelong learner, as somebody had mentioned earlier.
I do want to throw in just a little bit of a counterpoint here. So we primarily look for developers with computer science degrees, and the reason we do that is it's a really good demonstration of like foundational theory, and that you're going to be a very flexible developer. We have hired people from boot camps, and what we've found is that they're really good at one thing, but typically they're not as able to quickly switch from thing to thing to thing, which for an agency like us, where you have short-term projects, can be an issue. The other thing is like boot camps and certs both are like really broad categories. There are some really fantastic boot camps, and there are some fantastic certs, and there's some really kind of scummy, crappy boot camps that are more cash grabs than they are teaching opportunities. And there are some certs that are like very, very useful. They teach you really good skills, or you know, you need good skills in order to have the cert. And there are some certs that are like, we made this product, and if you get this cert, that means you can use this very one specific product. So it's, I like boot camps and certs are definitely useful, and they're definitely viable. But I think one thing to keep in mind as you're advising kids is that like it takes kind of a lot of context to know, is this boot camp or this certification going to be useful to me? It's not just like, oh yeah, go get a cert or a boot camp and you'll be fine. You got to do your research, unfortunately, still.
Well, to follow that, that leads to my follow-up question is there, and I recognize we have so many different roles in technology. It is not like, hey, I got a degree in technology, right? It is, so many different types of roles. But is the young person who's exploring and interested in technology, who, whether they decide to go to college or not, they're getting their feet wet and playing around, but they want to get some of those early certs. Are there any industry standard certs, not degree bearing, but just industry standard certs, like whether it be getting C++ or going and doing the Microsoft, suite? Like, what is the entry level thing that you would suggest to somebody that is interested in that, and you would say is good, is quality?
I don't think that there's a flat across the industry, get this cert or this boot camp or whatever, that can say you have a general sense of the industry space. That I do not think so. But there are wide enough ones. So if like you want to work in cloud, you can get a cloud cert, and that is a great jumping off point. But that it's still not across the industry. There's not one key to it all.
Sure.
I'll
Okay.
add, I think one thing that's nice is like the certs are great at having those there. You can still learn about other areas, and because sometimes boot camps and different things cost money, there's a lot of free resources. So there's things like Coursera. Stanford has a huge series of, a lot of their lectures are just recorded for you and going through those processes. I've used Udemy before to pick up on a couple of different like PySpark functionalities and different things there that I was not familiar with. So like there's a lot of those resources online where you can, one, dabble in them to be familiar, to go along with your cert. So building your resume bullet points is what I like to say. And then the other part to it is it helps you figure out what you are most passionate about. If you go try one on optimization and that's not for you, maybe you're looking at one in this other space. So it's really helpful to kind of get to dabble in them and see what you're interested in as well.
Fantastic. If you would do, I saw Joe put some in, and if you've got a couple that you would be willing to put in the chat for people who are looking to, again, dabble. This is going to be my pathway to my career path, but some great things to kind of explore. Put those in the chat, because that our counselors can then take that and share those with their kids. Hey, if you're interested in this area, start looking here. Next question: how can our educators, again, we have overwhelmingly counselors on here, but how can our educators in general do a better job of preparing our students for careers in technology? What advice would you give them?
think one of the things that I think for young people coming in is, and again, maybe kind of dovetail to some of the conversation we're having, is helping them really choose the culture they're about to step into. So thinking about what that organizational culture is. So for example, we're a small consultancy, and what we've worked out, well, we love to mentor and coach young people. If we bring too many young people into our environment, we demand too much of them too soon. And that's not fair to them. It kind of breaks them a little bit. And we've had to realize that over time, that we can't be good mentors until we kind of got the operational capacity to really see them on a pathway. And one of the things I just really encourage young people who are coming into roles is they kind of really look at what culture am I going into, what size of an organization, what's my pathway, what's my support mechanisms. Because I think in those early years, you really do need good mentors and good support. So I think, you know, again, that's maybe not a direct answer to your question, but I think it's such an important part of preparing young people is to kind of say, hey, this isn't just being on. Sometimes I think we put young people in this treadmill. Hey, go get these certs or go get these qualifications, come through high school, come through, you know, community college, university, and then just, you know, go get a job. And we can kind of blind them a little bit to what culture you're stepping into, what opportunities you're stepping into. So I think it's just a big part for them to lift their heads and go, hey, how do I lift my head and look what's out there? What's really going to be the right fit for me? And yeah, that's so much of that. I think if young people kind of choose their own culture and business to step into, it can really dampen their spirits.
Good mentorship and the right type of culture for a fit. Cool. Anybody else?
I'd like to share a resource, especially there is a program in cybersecurity called the Michigan Cyber Patriots Program. It's actually a national program that was started by the Air Force. And it is similar to Robotics First, which I think most people are more familiar with. But they have cybersecurity competitions, and many schools in Michigan have teams. It's a really strong program in Michigan. I will share information on that because the Michigan Cyber Patriot Group also is not nearly as expensive as Robotics First, but it gives students a very good basic understanding and is a great way to get them excited and experienced in some cyber technologies.
Fantastic. So what I heard was, as JJ mentioned, good mentorship, and we are definitely proponents of getting our kids out to do job shadows, industry tours, but ultimately we're really successful when we have somebody paired up with somebody that they know and trust, have a mentor to ask questions, go in and see different cultures. I've even told some of our counselors we get them out to do a job shadow, which is fantastic, but what if they do a job shadow and they hate that experience? And they're realizing it's not because they hate that career pathway, just the culture of that particular organization wasn't the right fit. That's why they need to give a couple different ones a shot, or find a mentor that they trust to help them kind of find that along. And then I love the idea of different groups, organizations, things like you mentioned Robotics First. A lot of our schools are doing STEM programs. These are great introductions, but not the end all be all. But you would say that kids who are interested in possibly a career in technology, this is a great first step to do some exploration. Is that what you're saying, Denise? Yeah. Okay.
I think there's a skill that that's really helpful for students to have as they're coming into the role is familiarity and a comfort with argument. You know, when you're in technology, you spend a lot of time trying to influence people who are not super into your particular domain and help them understand why you're making the recommendations you're making. If you are if you shrink back, if you say, hey, I think you should do this, and the client says, but why? And then you don't have a good answer for that, that limits your ability to be effective as somebody in the industry. And so I think I came from like a policy debate background in high school, and that was super useful. So I'm a little biased there, but I think getting students used to being able to kind of defend their reasoning for stuff and not have that freak them out is really, really important.
Again, another one of those skills. Okay, that's excellent. Yeah, and Samantha says if there are any questions to make through for our guests, or I mean our participants here, please make sure you throw them in the chat. I have two more. If I see a question coming from one of our audience members, I will kind of supersede for your questions. But it doesn't make for a good session here if it's dead silence. So until I see a question, I'm going to throw out. I got two more. First question was, there's a movement in West Michigan to improve diversity and inclusion in the tech fields. What initiatives or programs for those who are out in the West Michigan area, or even in your area, have you seen that effectively support underrepresented groups in tech?
I'll chime in again as the female on the panel today. So when I started in cybersecurity, about 11% of the field was women. We're now up to about 24%, which is still pretty underrepresented. I am going to share 2 additional links in chat. One for women in cybersecurity. There is a Women in Cybersecurity Michigan affiliate, and there is a Michigan Council of Women in Technology. Both offer scholarships for women who are going into tech
Excellent.
space and are great resources for women who want to go into tech.
Yeah, terrific. Love that. Yeah, to see how, if you know of any organizations that we can get women or people underrepresented populations in, that is sometimes like just got to get exposure, right?
And
Any
both
other-
of these organizations offer mentoring, both for college, high school. Oh yeah, Girls Who Code. Thanks, Edvin. That's a good one also. They all offer mentoring, not only for people who are still in college, but for different levels in your career as well.
Does anybody have anything specifically within your organization that you're doing or initiatives that we could be sharing with our audience?
I don't know how to call it if this is necessarily an initiative, but annually our company does a company-wide audit of all ethnicities, all genders, and their pay, and they try to raise everybody to be in the same level within their same roles. If there are any inequities, they are very publicly open. They're open. There's a report on like this was the inequity, this was the percentage difference. This is how we're going to address that. And I found that to be extremely effective and inclusive method internally. And again, as Denise mentioned, there's still an overwhelming majority of men in technology. I think that these programs are going to hopefully get to the bottom of that.
Right. Fantastic. I have, again, anybody in the audience who has a question for our tech. I know we've had a lot of great questions, a lot of great answers, but if you have a specific question, please go ahead and throw it in the chat. We have just a couple more minutes of that. And then if we don't have them, what we'll do is we'll put our audience here into breakout rooms to kind of discuss some stuff. So if we don't see your questions, then we're going to just go ahead and do breakout rooms. But I have one final question on my list here to make sure we cover. If you could give one piece of advice to somebody who's interested in a career in technology, what would it be?
Don't wait for somebody to give you permission. Just go do it.
I think that's exactly what I was going to say. That you just said, like, just start. Like, I think if you're geeked about stuff, just start. Don't wait for anybody, and just start to build a resume of projects and crazy stuff that you've done.
One of the things that somebody told me in my very first internship in like week 1 was whenever somebody says we don't do things like that or that's impossible, don't listen to them. That is never the case. Figure it out because there's always a way, and it's never as hard as they think it is.
I'm going to follow up with I've heard 2 people say yes, with the just start. Let me ask a follow-up question to that, just start. What do you mean by just start? Which I love that, but what do you mean by that? For the person, I love technology, and you should say just start. What do you mean so that we can help, our counselors can help the kids, meaning they're interested in tech? Do they just go and watch videos online? Do they practice whatever part area they're interested in, find freebie tools out there to help them play? Is it getting involved in a club? What do you mean by that, Joe, JJ?
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, I kind of consider myself having been like raised in technology by the internet. I didn't have like, I grew up on a farm in Tuscola County. There was not a lot of like, there was no CS program in my high school. There was none of that stuff. I just kind of followed my nose online and started doing stuff. So when I say just start, what I mean is like find literally anything about technology that you're interested in and make something. Doesn't matter what it is, right? There's like really great little dev kits that you can use to start getting into electronics and robotics. There's all kinds of different, ideas for things you can program. Make a little website, make a little app, make something small, and keep following your nose. I think like there's not a path into technology, right? Technology is a huge field, and there's a million different paths you can take, but they all involve having done some stuff, right? Writing some software if you're going to be a software developer, or like fussing around with like networks and system configurations if you're going to go more of the IT route. Like I don't know. I don't know if that's super useful, but like I think just, you know, be a little online. Honestly, I think YouTube videos are they're good, but it's real easy for that to be a passive experience. Um, I think trying to do something active helps a lot.
Okay, cool.
I'll add, I think technology is one of the few spaces where a lot of it is free, right? We are very open source focused. So Python, R, you can download those and start building your applications and things and really actually using what you'd be using potentially on a day-to-day basis, which is a unique opportunity that you can kind of, there's a less bridge to just get in there and dabble and start to learn.
Just for clarification for those who maybe are not technology savvy, Python and R are coding programs.
Yes. Yep. So those are some of the core programs for coding in that we call open source. If you hear open source, that means that
Mhm.
it's open to the public. And so those are the ones that you can have. There are others that are not, where companies buy them and you have to have like licenses, like student licenses. But for a lot of the ones that are today the most relevant, they are open source, meaning that you go to that website and you download it and you're starting.
Awesome. And Denise just added one here, says try Hack Me for cybersecurity. Awesome. Denise, anything to add in terms of the advice that you give with?
Yeah, I'm pulling some more URLs real quick. I think someone earlier on the panel mentioned, having a home lab, like, actually having systems that they play on. And I think that's something that's really essential. That's something we ask about in interviews, even for college internships and things like that, to find out, what have they done actually hands-on, what have they played with. So I'm also posting another link to Kali.org. Kali Linux is open source, can be installed on any computer system, essentially gives them hands-on Linux, hands-on access to a lot of different cyber tools.
So for our guests here, I think there's ways to make access to the chat afterwards that we can pass out to you. But we're definitely with the technology panel, so they always have tons of websites. Please make sure that you're getting your hands on all these different links, because that's why the tech people are very helpful in that area. Lots of links that you can then pass on to students. So there is a question that one of our counselors did put in here. Curtis says, when you consider your high school experience, what was missing for you? What could have been done better?
I think someone alluded to it earlier. One thing is there was no coding, right? And that was because that wasn't a thing until it goes on, because it's such a fast moving field, right? So it's very hard to do that. So I think focusing on problem solving is a big one, and just understanding how to solve those problems and those puzzle pieces, whatever that may be. And then knowing that the technology is always going to change, but the skill set doesn't, is what's really important to kind of hammer home. So even in my career, that the language of choice from programming has changed about 5 times. And so just having to stay relevant is there. So you're always going to be playing catch up. And that starts even in high school, right? There was no coding, there was no computer science degrees, probably when a lot of us started. So it's really about that core thing of learning and understanding how to problem solve. So whether that is doing a robotics thing where you can start to do a little bit of programming, whether there's some opportunities to kind of teach those skill sets of iteration thinking and different things like that, is really what I think they could have focused on, but because there was no coding, that was kind of missed.
Good. Anybody else to Curtis's question? Thank you very much. Curtis's question, like anything else we could have been doing differently. And I think Chad makes a great point too. Some of it is, no, we couldn't have done it differently. We just didn't know, right? Like that wasn't even a thing for us. But still, when you just talk about problem solving, Chad, then maybe even as educators, we say this, but we're not. Maybe it's just a maturity thing for kids. When I'm teaching you X problem solving in math, maybe you're never going to use that particular math, but the idea of the problem solving can translate to solving problems in your, whether that's math, science, language arts, whatever. But I don't know. Maybe that's just, how do we help them when we say we're teaching to be problem solvers? We're doing this in this context of this subject, but what we really are trying to teach you to do is to be problem solvers in the context of whatever thing that's in front of you. But if anybody else has something to add to that, please do. Is there anything else that you felt was missed in high school?
Absolutely agree with problem solving. People often ask, like, how did you go from OT to IT? I said they were the same basic process. You're assessing the situation, you're determining what's wrong, you're determining how to fix it, and then you fix it. And so it's that process. And yeah, the base knowledge underlying it is different, but it's the same process in both situations.
Awesome. And by the way, for those who are on the chat or following along to our audience, Samantha is collecting all, and we've got a lot. We've got a lot of links here and a lot of programs to check out and links to websites that our guests are putting on here. So make sure that you get them later. So any final thoughts here? We have about 5 minutes left, and it's not a lot of time, but I would love, unless I see one more question come up or final thoughts from each of you, I might put everybody into a breakout room for those last 5 minutes here, but we'll see how much time we have. Any final thoughts here? You've given us a lot of links, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I just feel is just really giving students just this broad spectrum of exposure. If they go and have one experience, they come back dejected from it. You know, I put a list in there of the top 50 jobs in IT from Indeed, and I'm sure counselors already have that kind of thing, but there's so many variation of jobs that people have that they can look at. And I think it is this idea of like, hey, there's so many aspects to IT and what you can do in the field. So I really would just encourage that, hey, they get as broad a spectrum of that as possible. And if they go down one avenue and it doesn't fit for them, and there's frustration as they come back from a, internship, or they come back from a job shadowing or whatever it might be, that they actually have a chance of, hey, let's look at where your skills align and what other opportunities there are. And I think as Denise has said a number of times, if you want to secure a job for the next 30 years, it's cyber. And there's so much opportunity in cyber, and there's even just such a range of specialities you can go into there as well. So yeah, and some of those salaries will probably ignite young people as well to get excited when you start to look through that. So
Yeah, I think to kind of Curtis's question in the chat, like,
Yeah.
what do you love most about your job? I think the thing that keeps me coming back to software is I think most people don't use the power that's available to them on these like amazing supercomputers we all have in our pockets and on our wrists and in our laps. Like, most people don't get as much as they could out of those systems because it's kind of this black box magic thing for the vast majority of people. And so I think helping people realize that they have a ton more agency and a ton more capability, that's what keeps me coming back to it. That's like, and this is a bit like DIY ethos. Like I say, I grew up on a farm. We were always fixing stuff and building stuff. And like, kind of, one thing that was instilled in me really early on was like an assumption that you can figure out how things work and you can make it work however you want if you give it enough time. And I think helping people see that with technology is really, really cool. And that's what keeps me coming back to it.
That's awesome. Awesome.
I was just gonna add, it's completely non-technical, and we've said it in a variety of different ways. Lean into imposter syndrome, because when you're feeling it, it means you're growing. It means you're putting yourself into spaces you haven't been before, and you're learning new things. I don't think it's something that ever goes away fully, because if it did, you're no longer learning. Is my opinion.
I like you're giving me some quotes here, Edmund. I like that. Lean into the imposter syndrome. Okay, that's good. And Kurt's asked some good questions here, and he's been doing this for a while, so he knows, like, oh man, we've run out of time. We can't do the breakout rooms now. So by asking the questions, so smart move. And we've got several things here to links up. Just in summary, because we have about 3 minutes left, I want to summarize real quick. I've heard that there are potential pathways for people who don't necessarily want to go to the degree route. There are pathways. There's a lot of opportunities to learn and to self-teach yourself. To what Joe, I think, said earlier, is just, you got to get out and do it. You got to be proactive. You got to start looking. When you have things that you have done and you've created and solved problems, whether you're creating problems and solving those problems or finding problems and solving those problems, as Edmund said, like when people said it can't be done, don't listen to that. When you're able to do and demonstrate that, and now you have your own resume that you built, regardless of whether it's a degree or not, you actually have something that you can show. Companies do look for that in the IT world. That said, on the flip side, we did hear some companies are looking for that CS degree or other degrees of technology to show resilience, to show the problem solving, to be able to kind of synthesize what you've taken and then apply it to different sets of problems. So it just depends on the role. It depends on the company. There's lots of opportunities to grow. I heard all of you talked about continual learning, and probably maybe in IT than some of our other career pathways. It's probably especially ingrained in your brains that continual learning is a necessity because everything changes so rapidly for you. And I think that's a great concept that we need to be taken to the rest of our subjects and the rest of our career pathways to recognize things are going to change. And if you don't keep up or try to stay on the cutting edge, you're going to fall behind. Get involved in lots of these different types of programs. There's a lot of things out there for you to explore your interests, as well as kind of find out your skill sets and niche. Because I think somebody, I can't remember who said it, I think maybe JJ, try it and find a mentor, but try a culture and see if that's a culture fit. But if it's not, try a different one, because from organization to organization, what you like to do, there's not just the sole factor. It's also depending on the culture and the organization and the area in which you're looking for. So some really great takeaways today. Really appreciate everybody's time, everybody on the panel, all of our participants here today listening in. Samantha was taking all of those links, and we'll make sure we grab all those things off the chat that we can send out to each of you who joined today. And then you can sift through them all and then try to parse them and try to help maybe students who come in who said, I'm interested in technology, but I don't know where to start. I want to thank Denise, Chad, JJ, Joe, Edvin for being our panelists today and for all the insights you've given us, and for everybody here participating today. Thank you very much. The homework for those of you who are guests today is to just walk away from this, take a look at those links, and then think about how can you apply some of the things you heard today when you're dealing with students and working with your educators to try to give them some insights that you learned yourself. Thanks so much, everybody. I'll stick around for just a minute or two. If anybody else has any other further questions, I'll stick around, but otherwise have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you. Take care.
everyone.
Thanks, y'all.
Really appreciate it. Thanks, Denise.
Hi, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. How would, like, I'm a guidance counselor here at a middle school in Saginaw.
Mhm.
And, how do we, like, earn our continuing ed credits for
this? Yeah,
yes,
so for this, once you've so you signed up through Kent ISD to take this course.
yes.
So afterwards, I don't know, like Samantha's program, maybe she sends you a survey. I don't know, maybe she doesn't. But when you're done, I do know that Kent ISD will send you a survey. Once it might take a little bit of time for this to go through and it to be processed.
Okay,
But once it does, you'll get an email at some point saying, hey, complete the survey from Kent ISD. And then we complete the survey, and then we submit the attendance from everybody was here, and we're taking attendance through the Zoom. Then it'll show up eventually on your transcripts. It just says there's nothing else you have to do. So we use the Zoom attendance, but you will get a survey. I think that we've been told sometimes that Kent ISD says you need to complete the survey in order to get the credit.
okay.
And then of course, probably when you go to the state of Michigan, right, you have to go.
Yes,
And there's
yes.
we
upload our,
yeah.
and have to fill out their evaluation
Yeah,
to
exactly.
get
But
the
you don't
credit.
have to load anything.
Okay, do you know of any other, trainings like these in careers in technology?
As far as specifically careers in technology, no, but my colleague Samantha, who this is her program, she's got like 7 or 8 more of these throughout the year. So I don't know if you sign up for other ones.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she's got the next one is going to be, and I should have mentioned that, and I apologize, Samantha. Our next panel, and our next Career Readiness Network is going to be November 12th, and they're going to be doing informational interviews. So we'll be talking about informational interviews. And then she's got one in December, January, February, March, April, and May. And each one of those are either an hour or 2 hours long, depending on the content.
Gotcha. So just keep looking on the Kent ISD site. And...
Yeah. Look at the Kent ISD site. We have other ones that my colleague does. She does 30-minute what they call career chats with like a single interview with a single person in a different career path. Like she does several of them a month. So you can check for those as well.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah, and then I'm doing a session in a couple of weeks called How to Create a Bank of Employer Partners. So again, that's on the NIC website. It's like a 2-hour session on how to get in there and try to what do I do if I do want to get guests to come in or find business partners to work with our school? How do I do that?
Oh, when is yours?
October 22nd. Okay. And that's also on that same Kent ISD website to sign up.
Okay, and your name is
Eric.
Eric?
Yeah, Eric Kelleher.
Eric Kelleher. Okay. Okay, what's the name of that one?
how to create a bank of employer partners.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll check that one out.
If there's anybody else here who have any other questions, anybody here, I'll stick around for just like 2 or 3 more minutes.
Okay. Thank you. It was awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you.